Hello and welcome to this video. This is a simple exercise that I shared with members inside my community to get us warmed up to do some loose watercolor style paintings. I thought some of you here on YouTube might find it fun to follow along as well, so I'm sharing it here and I hope that you enjoy trying this out. So the first exercise, this warm-up exercise, is going to be painting a feather. And I actually have a feather, and it's because one of my old art teacher from when I was really young, she actually gave this to me and told me that this would be a good exercise to do when first starting with watercolors. And I love that idea, and I did do it a few times. And it's funny because you wouldn't think feathers would be easy to paint, but they're actually rather easy, and especially if you're just using one color. And so I picked a reference photo for us, but if you have a feather, you can actually just look at the one you have. But I picked a reference photo for us, and that's what we're going to use. So instead of having you go in just straight with a brush, I want you to take a moment and sketch the rough shape of this feather, because I feel like it will help you feel more confident about going in with color. If you're brave, you can just go in and do the sketch without drawing first, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So all I'm going to do is draw sort of the basic elements. So the first is going to be the centerpiece, and I'm actually going to draw it a little darker than I would normally, but it's for you to be able to see on camera. Okay, so I'm just sort of looking at the reference photo, and this is a B lead, so it's pretty soft so that it's dark, but you can use like an HB if you want to. So all I'm doing is I'm going around the edge, and I'm just looking at the shape, and I'm making note of where there's a gap on the edge, and then I'm just following the outline of the feather. Roughly, it's not even perfect. And then I see there's like a little gap here, so I'll draw that in. Down here, the feather splits down, and we can't really see the bottom of it in this photo, but we're just going to pretend that it ends here. Okay, let's pull this down a little longer. And so that's one side, and then I'm just going to roughly draw the other side. Okay, so again, it's very rough. I'm just sort of trying to find the outline of what's going on. I'm not drawing all the details that go inside of the feather, it's just what's outside. And I'm just trying to capture sort of this rough outline. And then that's it. So that is my feather drawing. And now we're going to go in and paint it loosely. So I have my size 10. And this isn't normally where I put my water either. It's just so that you can see what it looks like, or see the method that I'm doing when I'm dipping my brush. Sometimes it's helpful to see. So I wanted to make sure it was in the camera view. All right, so we have our drawing, and I'm just going to use a single color. So I'm actually going to use blue. This blue I have on my palette, it happens to be I think it's a Prussian blue. So whatever you have on your palette will work. I'm just picking a blue. You could do a pink. And we're going to keep this super simple and just do one color, but we're going to vary the value of it so that we get light and dark areas, and that's going to in it of itself create some interest. All right, so I'm just diluting down my paint, and then I'm going to test it on my little piece of paper here to see how light it is. So yeah, see how light? That's pretty light. And so we're going to paint sort of with this light color, and we're going to paint very quickly. So like I said before, make sure that your brush is almost constantly moving, and you're just creating sort of brush strokes coming down here, using your pencil line as a guideline, but also knowing that in here there are areas that there are going to be gaps. So you want to keep those there. You want to look at your reference photo and then make sure that you're leaving sort of these little highlights, these little white areas in some spots. Keep your brush moving. especially down here. As we get to the bottom, there's a lot more empty space. So yeah, I'm just trying to capture the essence of what's going on. Okay. And then there's obviously like a center line here. So I'm going to sort of put in that line and then come in and before doing the other side, come in quickly, and you want to move pretty quickly because you want the paint to be still wet. So I'm getting just more of a darker color. So you see how I darkened it? It's darker than the first. And then now I'm going to come in and look at the reference photo and look at where there's dark areas. I'm just going to pop them in really quickly. So, and then in the meanwhile, add a tiny bit of, just a little bit of detail on the edge, just by how I lay my brush down. You know, I'm not drawing specifically. It's just sort of getting in there and adding a little bit of detail while this paint is still wet. And just kind of putting in a darker color. And then there's a lot of little lines here. If you want to add a tiny bit of just a hint of these details, that helps a little bit. Okay, just like that. So that's going to create one side of our feather. So now we're going to go back to being more diluted. And I'll show you what that looks like. See, so now I'm back to a light color, and then I'm going to come in here and then start to put in the other side. So it's the same idea that we did with the first. Your brush is almost constantly moving. You're skipping over some areas, letting the white show through from the paper. It adds a bit of detail, but you're also sort of looking back at the reference photo and then making sure that you're capturing what you see. So down here it's also lighter in the photo, so you might even just want to leave it completely white down here if you want to. It's totally up to you. And so same idea, now while it's still wet, we want to come in with a darker color. Again, see darker there. And then now I want to come in and add some of the details. And now I'm just looking at the reference photo and looking at where it's a little bit darker, taking a little bit of creative liberty where I feel like it's gonna look good if I do this. These edges have a little bit more of a darker area, so just and then the middle spine is the darkest, so I would come in and go even darker, so add more of that pigment of whatever color you're using. Test it on the paper. It should be dark. The value should be the darkest you've been able to use right now up to this point. And then down here you can see along the rib of this there is a dark shadow, so I'm just going to lay that down, hopefully while this side is still wet, and then I'm going to just define the end of this feather, just like that. So I hope that this was helpful if you do give it a try. As I mentioned before, this is an actual exercise that I shared inside my Paint With Me membership community. And if you'd like to find out more about Paint With Me and you're interested in joining us inside to practice your watercolors, check out the link in the description box below, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.